welcome to Blackbriar Gaming. Today, we'll be looking at the 8th Legion, the Night Lords, in the next video in our How to Build a Legion series. Hopefully, this is useful not only to those interested in the Night Lords, but for all Legion players, giving them an understanding of the concepts behind army building in Horus Heresy, and an idea of what each Legion can bring to the table. I hope you enjoy. A quick note before we get into it, a subscribe and a like really helps us reach a bigger audience. So if you enjoy the video, please hit those buttons down below. Also, be sure to check out our affiliate link in the description. The Night Lords, untrustworthy psychopaths that love to decorate their armour with the skulls and skins of their enemies, or their allies, or really any innocent civilians they come across. Anyone, they'll choose anyone. The Night Lords are one of my favourite traitor legions. They're dishonourable, even amongst their own kind. They use terror as a weapon. They embrace their darkness, even before the Heresy. And their lightning wreathed power armour looks fantastic on the table. With the new night fighting rules, they're definitely one of the stronger legions. So let's get into it and take a look at what they can do and how to build an army. First up, as usual, the Age of Darkness box set. What does it bring? So, building a Night Lord's army can take you in so many directions. There's very few bad choices for the 8th Legion, as their special rules are just so wide-ranging, flexible, and almost always useful. The Age of Darkness box set is therefore a great choice for Night Lord's armies. There will certainly be cases where you may not want to include a Land Raider Spartan in your lists, or a whole bunch of Cataphractii Terminators, but look, you can say that for most legions. The Mark 6 armour looks great in the Night Lord's scheme, and the aesthetics of the armour suit the lore of the Legion nicely. 40 Mark 6 lads can be used as tactical squads, heavy support squads, or tactical support squads. The bigger the squads, the better to take advantage of the Night Lord special rule, which we'll touch on later. With a bit of creativity, sourcing parts, or 3D printing them, you can turn them into despoiler squads, assault squads, or even the Night Lord's unique terror squads, all of which great choices for an 8th Legion army. The Cataphractii Terminators are an awkward one. The Night Lords have 2 Legion-specific Terminator units already. We've got and look, I'm going to call these the Conteca sounds good, could be Contica, who knows, and the Atramenta. Both of these units are a lot of fun, and they look fantastic, so you want to include them in your 8th Legion army where you can. The issue is that they're also both in Tartarus Terminator armor, so even if you're going down the route of kind of converting the Terminators that you get in the box set, you can't do it in this case because it's just the wrong kind of armor. Now, while there's certainly nothing wrong with a big unit of Night Lords Cataphractii Termies charging up the table in a Spartan, it's definitely not my first pick on how I'd want to build a list. If you can swap your box set Cataphractii out for some Tartarus with someone, I'd recommend you do that. Not only because Tartarus feel a bit nicer in a Night Lord's army, but you could then get converting and turn them into either of those special Terminator units. Noting, of course, there aren't actually units for the Atramenta as they're a Legacies unit. Now, not a Legacies, I should say. I'm pretty sure they're exemplary. Either way, doesn't matter. They're not in the main rulebook and they don't have models. Now, even though they can't take advantage of the Night Lord's special rule, as they currently only count as a single model, Contempted Dreadnoughts are always a solid addition to any army. Night Lords sometimes struggle with getting through those 2+ armor saves, so having a Contempted Dreadnought or 2 on hand to deal with those situations is very handy. When it comes to the Praetors, the Axe Praetor with his skulls is perfectly suited to the Night Lord's aesthetic, so that's a nice win. There's also a bunch of Night Lord special characters in the Legacies PDF that this guy could represent, or the other Praetor, either or, could represent with a bit of conversion work. So there's lots of choices out there for cool special characters that will need some converting and need some creativity. So, in summary, the Age of Darkness box set is a great starting point for a Night Lord's army, and you're going to want more than just the 40 Marines that come with it. Let's talk about why as we look at the Night Lord's special rule. So it's aptly named a talent for murder. The Night Lord's special rule essentially gives you a +1 to your wound and armor penetration rolls if you outnumber your opponent in any phase, or specifically if they're pinned or falling back in the shooting phase. So it's on. It's on for the shooting phase and it's on for the fight phase. This special rule is fantastic as it's on for both those phases, as I said, and very achievable if you're tailoring your list accordingly and making some good choices in game. I really like these kind of special rules for legions. They provide this almost mini-game within your phases on the way you choose to do things. The Ultramarines, very similar. You've got to think about the choices you're making when you do things, where you allocate your shots, and it makes it a bit creative and fun. So I'm super into it. Now, it's not rocket science. To get this rule to pop, you want big squads, or at least squads that are bigger than your opponents at the time that you shoot at them. So while 20 strong tactical, or fight them I should say, now while 20 strong tactical and assault squads seem like the obvious answer, taking 15 or so in a unit gives you a few wins to play around with against most people who are taking units of 10 or less Marines. For squads capped out at 10, such as a heavy support squad or tactical support squad, adding an apothecary, tech marine, or console gets you over the line and into that sweet outnumbering spot. In the shooting phase, having some squads that can spread pinning throughout your opponent's army is definitely worthwhile, as that also gets you the +1 to wound, as well as that outnumbering piece. A couple of smaller recon squads with Nemesis bolters are a solid option, backed up by a Scorpios or two. Why wouldn't you when you can? Don't forget that rotor cannons, an option available to terror squads, also have pinning. They are also available to tactical support squads, it should be said, which are a little bit cheaper. And their strength of 3 is offset if you are gaining that outnumbering or that pinning piece as well. So rotor cannons, powerful in Night Lords units, armies I should say. Now the Night Lords benefit from big units as well as smaller units that can take a wound or two here and there to get you those outnumbering bonuses. Dreadnoughts with a decent ranged weapon are great for this, just to kill 1 or 2 Marines so that your other squads can take advantage of it and start to outnumber. Land speeders, small recon squads that we talked about, Legion Rapier batteries, they're all good for this role too, depending on how you choose to build your army. They're like a cruel version of the Ultramarines, as I was saying. Their units synergize together, and the players have to make considered decisions in their shooting phase. So big squads, and then a few little cheeky small squads running around to get those enemy units under strength. Now, Night Lords can easily be a shooting, close combat, or balanced army with this special rule, depending on how you enjoy to play and what units you like. So build the Night Lords army that you love, is what I'm saying here, and that's cool. It's cool that you can do that. So, now that we're all over the Night Lords' sneaky special rules, let's have a look at their rights of war. There are 2 Night Lords' rights of war. We'll start with the likely less popular option, but oh so fun, the Swift Blade. Now, I'll bring my book on over. This one's a little complicated, but essentially, a detachment using this right of war can take 5 HQ choices, regardless of the Force Org chart. Now, one of these must be a Legion Praetor, and all the others have to be Legion Centurions, and must select either a combat bike or a jet bike. They can still select console upgrades, which is fine. Now, no single HQ choice is selected as the Warlord. Instead, all HQ choices are treated as the Warlord. So all 5, up to 5 of those minis are treated as your Warlord. So they have to choose the Jadok Clanlord Warlord trait, which is it gains counterattack 1 for the units they're in, and they ignore all penalties to their movement and charge rolls due to terrain, and may reroll failed dangerous terrain checks. Very nice. And they get an additional reaction in the movement phase. Now, all the HQs in your detachment must be slain to fulfill the Warlord, killing the Warlord. Slay the Warlord, there we go. So it's really hard for your opponent to get Slay the Warlord with this right of war. And the bonus sticks around, the Clan Lord bonus, that Warlord trait, until they're all dead as well, noting that's specific to the units they're in. So, pretty cool. Also, just as an added bonus, Outrider squads may be taken as troop choices in this detachment. So it's all about those bikes, those combat bikes. Really cool. Limitations, only for a primary detachment, that's fine. You cannot take any model whose rule states it must be the Warlord. So Legion Primarchs are no good, for instance, in this one. The Night Haunter is not in here. And a detachment using this right of war may not take any units that include one or more models with the Heavy, Bombard, Slow, Super Heavy, or Artillery unit subtypes. Right, so that actually cuts down quite a lot. The Heavy is a big one there. So no Breaches, no Cataphracti Terminators. There's certain land speeders. The Javelins, I'm pretty sure, have Heavy. No Rapier batteries. I mean, they're Heavy and Artillery. No heavy support squads. So lots of limitations here to consider. So that is the Swift Blade right of war. What a wild ride. Okay, essentially, it's a post-human bikie gang obsessed with Halloween. I love it. I'm so into it. You can either spread your HQs around in this kind of army, the 5 of them that you can take, or, as I kind of prefer, you can put them all in one big unit, Death Star, super bike riding, amazing unit, and just charge it right up the center of the table, leaving the rest of your army to be a bit more sensible. Or you can pepper them around and have a whole bunch of Outrider or Sky Hunter Squadron units flying around the place or brumming, if you will. Both options, bunch of fun, and it's going to look so good on the table. There's nothing better than bulk bikes on a table. It just looks so good, especially when they're all wreathed in lightning. Now, consoles that will thrive in this army, using this Rite of War, include I'm just going to go through the ones that I would pick. So a Telepathy Librarian, it's just an almost auto-include for shutting down your opponent's reactions and carrying on the Night Lord's pinning shenanigans. That's a no-brainer. Chaplain, super good. If you're going to go down to the Death Star route, grab a Chaplain, chuck it in there. Now you're re-rolling to hit. You're stubborn as well. Leadership 10, probably already from the Praetor, but that stubborn and re-rolls to hit in the first round of combat is fantastic. Chaplains are great. Take them. Legion Herald is a cool choice, just to get a bit more line into your army. The Outrider squads, even though you can take them as troops in this Rite of War, do not get line, a common theme. So grabbing a Herald just makes one of those bike units a line unit, which is really nice for capturing those objectives. I probably wouldn't put it in that Death Star unit that I was talking about with all my consoles and a bunch of bikes. I'd probably pop this off to one of the other ones because you don't actually want because it's fearless. Herald gives you fearless as well, and you don't want your Death Star unit to be fearless because then it can't take advantage of shrouding. So I'd probably put that in a separate either Sky Hunter Squadron or Outrider squad, and have them being a cheeky little capturing objective unit, little line unit going around the table. Now, Primus Medicae, another great choice, the final console that I'd bother with, and I'd chuck into my Death Star just to make sure we get that feel no pain and makes our bike riding murderers a bit more survivable. I think Outriders are an absolutely underrated unit in this edition, and being able to take them as troops, even if they don't get line, is really nice. They're so cheap for what they do and are really flexible in the way you can build them. You can go close combat, you can go shooting. So I'd predominantly build Outrider squads as smaller shooting units, probably 5 or 6 of them, as you can't go wrong with either twin-linked plasma or melter guns. It's so rare to get those as twin-linked in a Legion army. I can't actually think of a circumstance where that happens elsewhere. So those you're really going to get a lot of hits on compared to what you might from a tactical support squad. So while you can make Outriders combat focused with the range of weapon options, including giving each of them a power weapon if you're that way inclined, I think they perform better as ranged harassment units. So that's how I'm kitting them out. I would then give all of my HQs a Sparta combat bikes, the budget option. It's only, I think, 10 points compared to 30 points for a jet bike, which is just a lot. It's a lot of points. And I'd put the majority of them in a Legion command squad, also tooled out with combat bikes. Except for the Herald, he's hanging out with that smaller shooting Outrider unit off to the side, capture objectives, make it fearless. But a Legion command squad, just so good. Such a mean unit. The Legion Chosen, which is the name of a command squad marine, with a combat bike and power weapon, it's only 33 points. Power Axes, my go-to here to get some AP2, which Night Lords struggle with the consoles taking a range of the Night Lords' unique AP3 chain weapons. So you got a whole bunch of command squad kitted out with Power Axes, you got all those consoles carrying around those wild chain glaives and all kinds of things the Night Lords can take. So for 33 points for those command squads, you get a weapon skill 5 Marine, 2 wounds, 2 attack space, 2+ save. It's moving 14 inches or more a turn on those combat bikes. It has a power axe and the Chosen Warrior special rule to protect your consoles from challenges to pin them down. So it's so good. Now, the unit's one weakness, a lack of invulnerable saves, is actually countered by the Praetor and your bulk Centurions who can play wound sharing shenanigans between them. So creating the Death Star unit takes away that one weakness of the command squad on bikes, and it just makes it such a good unit. People are really going to struggle with this one. I love the idea of this unit and can't wait to see it on the table. It's going to look so good as well. You can do some just amazing conversion stuff with that command squad as well. Cool stuff. Now, outside of these bike units, more traditional line units to capture objectives and bring some bodies to the table is recommended. Tactical squads, assault squads, recon squads, these are all a must. Any of the Night Lord's special units also fit beautifully into this list, with either infiltrate or deep strike, making sure your Death Star unit has some support when they're up the table getting stuck in. You'll want some units with decent range to pop any tanks or transports in those early turns, as your Death Star unit isn't fantastic at it. So you can't take anything with heavy, so your choices are pretty limited here. Dreadnoughts with melter cannons or the Gravis las cannon is great, sure. I like the Legion Proteus land speeder squadrons with grav guns, because each land speeder can take a couple of grav guns. They're fast enough to keep up with your bikes, and if you've got a full unit of 3 of them, 6 grav guns is going to take out pretty much any vehicle in the game that's not a super heavy. So that's pretty fantastic. Now, next up, that's the Rite of War. That is our Swiftblade Rite of War. I think it's a lot of fun. But the next Rite of War we're going to look at, and I've seen this taken numerous times in opponents that I've played against. It is terrifying. It is called, aptly, the Terror Assault. So let me just read it out. Summarizing, of course. Now, when anyone's using this Rite of War, the night fighting rules are automatically in effect for the first and second game turn. So good. At the third game turn, it's just like any regular night fighting ending. You roll a 4+, and if it's 4+, it continues. Otherwise, they finish on the third turn, and then they finish automatically in the fourth turn. So essentially, you just get automatic first 2 turns night fighting, 50-50 chance on that third turn. Fantastic. Terror squads and Night Raptor squads can be taken as troops. Once again, troops but not line. And any model with the Night Lord special rule and the character unit subtype in a detachment using this Rite of War gains the Fear 1 special rule. Now, they can already do that by taking the Trophies of Judgment, I want to say, upgrade. But that thing's like, let's have a look, hang on. That's 10 points. So you're just getting that for free on every single one of your sergeants or every single one of your characters, which is really nice. Fear is such a good mechanic. Now, limitations, has to be primary detachment. Yep. Only a single heavy support choice. Yeah, okay, brutal. And an army who has this Rite of War may not include any Lords of War or models with the super heavy subtype. Night Lords just not into their super heavies. All right, so this is just so good. Night fighting is an absolute game changer in this edition. Taking advantage of it and adding to its leadership impact by having fear across pretty much your entire army is a sure way to win games. Never forget that night vision from Prey Sight, and this is where it all starts to synergize. Night Lords can take Prey Sight, and I'll talk about that a little later as well, which gives them night vision. It's a 15-point unit upgrade, means that your opponent can't gain the benefits of Shrouded, and it means you can get past that night fighting that you've automatically brought in for just 15 points per unit. So good, and not all units need it, right? Just those ones that are going to be doing some long-range shooting. The potential here is huge. Okay, so how would I build a Terror Assault army? I think balance is the key. You want decent shooting to take advantage of the night fighting overmatch, and then some assault elements to sow fear amongst your opponent, literally, and then clean up their army. So first, the shooting. With only a single heavy support choice in this Rite of War, it's a tough toss-up between a squadron of Scorpius and a heavy support squad with large cannons. It's whichever you prefer, whichever floats your boat. I have taken, in my Alpha Legion army, I've built a 10-strong squad of las cannons. I vowed never to do that again in one of my Legion armies. It's too good. It's obnoxiously good. So I'd be a little creative, and I say little creative, I mean Scorpius are still... They're so good as well. But a couple of Scorpius are a great choice for that heavy support slot. Really, any army can get advantage of them. Night Lords, just putting Prey Sight on those Scorpius makes them so tasty. You can really do some things that your opponent is not expecting. Next up for the shooting piece, so you've got your Scorpius already. Next up, or las cannons if you're that way inclined. Next up, recon units with Nemesis bolters to hold those backfield objectives and spread some pinning amongst your opponent's units. Most armies are doing this, but Night Lords do it just so much better. With Prey Sight, night fighting, I love it so much. 1's good, 2's better, 2 units of recons, make sure, because you often have 2 objectives in your backfield, or 2 kind of backfield places where you want line units. So 2 little recon squads is really nice, if you can afford it. They're not cheap in points. If you choose to deep strike part of your force, it's worth using your recon squads to pick out augury scanners from enemy units. And remember, you can do this. An augury scanner, you give it to an individual model when you upgrade your units. So your enemy, and you're going to be deep striking with this Terror Assault, because why would you not? So your opponent's going to have some augury scanners into some shooting units, probably tac squads, probably some heavy support squads. Use your recon squads to just snipe. Instead of the sergeants being the first pick every single time, go for that augury scanner first. It's going to make their life just sad when your deep strike turns up, and it's really cool. All right, so that's the long range shooting. No, there's more. Legion rapier batteries. So good in this list. Armed with either laser destroyers or quad launchers, depending what your local meta looks like and what your list is lacking. They're a great shooting unit, and they come in the Elite's Force Org slot, which gets around a heavy support restriction. Now, you can give them prey sight, and their bulky rule means it's going to be easy enough to outnumber your opponent's unit or vehicles, which count as 10 models, to get that +1 to wound or armor penetration. The wound probably not being so important because you're strength 9. But that +1 to armor pen, really nice. Suddenly you're getting the bonus, just like Iron Warriors, in fact. But you can see at night. So handy. And they're bulky for each. So a unit of 3 accompanied by their handlers, let's say 12 plus 6, you're looking at 18 is the strength of that squad. So you're going to outnumber most of the time, which is really nice. Now, for mid-range shooting, a big terror squad is just too flavorful not to include in our terror assault list here. Give it a bunch of rotor cannons. You don't need to fill the entire squad out with rotor cannons. It gets expensive. Have a few guys that can take some wounds and die and not be too sad about it. They'll absolutely decimate just regular Marines, which is what you're shooting these guys at. And it just keeps the pinning turning over. Now, terror squads are one of the few squads in the game that can take a Legion drop pod as a dedicated transport, which isn't a terrible option if you're also deep striking some Night Raptors or Kentika Terminators. Kentika Terminators? Kentika? No one knows. Nobody. I even Googled it. It didn't help. Now, for the assault aspects of your army, a big unit or 2 of Legion Despoilers or assault squads will give you enough bodies in your opponent's deployment zone to win victory points and take advantage of the Night Lord's special rules. Back these up with those Night Raptors or Kentika Terminators that we were talking about, and you've got a really flexible army that can perform in any mission. Add Contempt to Dreadnoughts and some of the consoles that we've talked about already with any points left over, and you got yourself a solid army ready to win a bunch of games. So that's the rights of war for the Night Lords. On top of this, the Night Lords are spoilt with some great Warlord traits and armory options that I briefly want to talk about. Servitor 2, Servitor being their special character in the book. Great option for your Terror Assault army if you're happy to include some transports in there because you can't deep strike. If you want to take it to the next level, and if you love the miniature and you love the character. Now, I want to talk quickly about the Flaymaster Warlord trait because this is what's really just the fear combined with night fighting is what gives the Night Lords their real power. And the Flaymaster Warlord trait is so good for it. It gives your Warlord Fear 1, and as you kill things, it can go up to Fear 3, which is just so obnoxious. Never forget that there's not too many stubborn units in the game. Most of them, and it's all the Terminator units here that I'm talking about, are what we call inexorable. Inexorable? Yeah, I think so. I think that's the right rule. I'm not going to check. And what that means is that they ignore most modifiers to leadership, except from fear. Never forget that. So giving your Warlord, giving him this Warlord trait, Flaymaster, letting him go up to Fear 3, and just deep striking him right into your opponent's army. So good. So good. They're going to be, if it's night fighting, which it probably will be if you turn up on turn 2, fingers crossed, your opponent's at -2 leadership for the most part across their army as you start to put units down from your deep strike close to them so they have to take pinning checks. You're pinning everything. It's amazing. The synergy is fantastic. Now, when it comes to Night Lord's Armory, I've already talked about Prey Sight. It's really good. They've got this amazing Eschaton Power Claw. I wouldn't take that. It's so expensive to give that to a Praetor. So I would leave it for my Kentika Terminator Sergeant. He can take it for, I think, just 15 points, which is quite nice. I won't go on more about Prey Sight. That's fine. They own night fighting. We all know it. We've got it. Just remember to pay the points and put it on the right units. I have played a Night Lord player that just forgot to put Prey Sight on some of their units because they just kind of assume that everything gets night fighting and it's shenanigans going on. But no, you have to pay for it. It is 15 points. Put it on the right units. Don't forget. Trophies of Judgment that I talked about before, they give Fear 1 to any character. The Terror Assault, you get it essentially for free. so you don't have to worry about it. But if you're not, for some reason, running Terror Assault, there's some other nice Rites of War that goes well with Night Lords. Take Trophies of Judgment, people. Just having Fear 1 all over the place is really nice. Next up, Servitor. Just quickly. It's definitely worth talking about him. He's one of the Night Lord's special characters. They have 3 others in the PDF, Legacies PDF. So look at those as well. But Servitor, his Warlord trait gives Cataphracti and Tartarus Terminators Deep Strike, which is one of the few ways to give basic Terminator units Deep Striking in this game, and it's really powerful. They also, just because they can, gain preferred enemy everything on the turn they arrive from Deep Strike. Now that you can assault out of Deep Strike, jumping in with a bunch of Terminators, just obnoxious. It's so good. There's definitely worse things you can do than using a bunch of Cataphracti Terminators from the box set, giving them all kinds of crazy weapons, Power Fists and Lightning Claws, and just throwing them in the middle of your enemy's army, spreading fear, causing chaos. Now, it's a fantastic option that unlocks this deep striking themed army. You can combine Servitor with Pride of the Legion Rite of War for some real shenanigans to make sure those Terminators are troops and have line. Really good option if you want to go down that route. Now, finally, last thing we're going to talk about. I've had viewers ask for an example of a list, an army list, at the end of these videos. Apparently people are struggling putting army lists together. So let's look at what a 2,000 point list looks like for a Terror Assault Night Lord's army. I like the 2,000 point mark, especially for list building, as it forces you to make some considered list building decisions, as opposed to just taking everything that's good in bigger 3,000 point games. So that's why I've chosen the 2,000 point mark. For 3,000 point games, just add good things, is the answer there. So at 2,000 points, here's what I'm looking at taking. In the HQ, so of course, Terror Assault, Rite of War, it is just traditional Night Lords. It's how you want to run them. It's so good. In the HQ slot, I'm looking at a Legion Delegatus to unlock the Rite of War option. Praetor, more expensive. If you can find the points, Praetors are great, but a Legion Delegatus not only lets you take the Rite of War, is cheaper, and also comes with that little nifty ability for your army to ignore pinning for one of the turns in the game and stand back up and act, which is just, it's so good. Don't forget that. What would I arm him with? Artificer armor comes with, just to let you know, we're talking about the basic Legion Centurion here. We're not talking about Terminator armor. I'd throw a Thunder Hammer on him, as opposed to any of the Night Lord's special weapons. Jump Pack and the Flame Master Warlord trait. Keep nice and cheap. Next up, I'd take, in the consoles, you've got to take a console. They're all just so good. In this case, I think I'm going to go with a Legion Vigilator for the list that I'm building. Just bare bones Vigilator, just to make sure that pinning is getting thrown out there on some really key enemy squads. Definitely for the turn that you turn up from Deep Strike, which is what this army is trying to do. Now, in the elite slot, I'm looking at the Kentucky Terminator squad in a 6, just to give them some extra wounds, putting Volkite Cavitors on them as opposed to Heavy Flamers. Template weapons are just trash in this edition. I'm sorry, they are. Volkite, great though. And I'm going to give the Dissonant that Eschaton Power Claw that we talked about, which is really nice, but just too expensive for independent characters. So nice, juicy 6-man Kentucky Terminator squad. Next up in the elite slot, a unit of 3 Legion Rapier batteries with laser destroyers and prey sight. They're just a great unit. They're so underrated. Rapier batteries, they can move and shoot. They're ordnance. They're like AP1, because why not? They're twin linked. Just so good. And they're cheaper. They're much cheaper than a 10-man las cannon squad, and they're going to put out kind of the same amount of hurt because they're twin linked. So these guys are great. And at range 36 with prey sight, fantastic. Next up, because I can't build a list without a Contemptor Dreadnought, I'm going for a Contemptor with a Gravis Power Fist with Graviton Gun and a Gravis Melt Cannon for trying to take out some of those transports so your deep striking squads can then clean up the juicy innards. Next up, in the troop squad, I've gone with a squad of 15 Despoilers, and then a squad of 15 Assault Marines. In the Despoiler squad, I've put in a Legion Vexilla, 3 Power Axes, a Sergeant with Artificer Armor, and a Power Axe. Love my Power Axes. You're gonna see that as a theme. For the Assault squad, once again, 3 Power Axes in there, and a Sergeant with Artificer Armor, and a Power Fist. Just for something different, modeling opportunities. Why wouldn't you? So the Assault squad being a bit faster there, which is great, and the Despoil squad being a little more survivable, but all of them being themed around getting in and chopping stuff up. You can choose to deep strike the assault squad. The Conteka can also choose to deep strike. Comes down to the mission that you're playing, and it just gives you that flexibility of deployment, which is really nice. I only had points enough for 1 Legion Reconnaissance Squad in this list, just 5 of them. Give them Prey Sight, because of course, at 72 inches of range. A Nuncio Vox, do not forget Nuncio Voxes, people. If you've got template weapons, and by template I mean the big blast and the small blast weapons in your list, make sure you're bringing Nuncio Voxes. They let you reroll the scatter dice, which is just, it is clutch. When using those large pie plates. So put a Nuncio Vox, put them somewhere where you can see the units you're going to want to be shooting at with your pie plates. And then some Nemesis Bolters, because of course. Next up, for the 4th troop option, is a Terror Squad, 10 of them. I've given 6 of them rotor cannons just to keep points down a little, and just the headsman with artificer armor there. So nothing overcosted, keeping them relatively cheap for what they can do, but just out there to give out some more pinning, and just for theme. Just for theme, because theme's a thing. Lastly, the single heavy sport option that we're allowed in a Terror Assault list, I've gone with 2 Legion Scorpius. So a Legion Scorpius squadron with 2 Scorpius within it, and given them Prey Sight, because you can. And that's awesome. So, that is the list we're looking at. That's 2,000 points, exactly on the nose. There's so many ways you can build this list. You could change out the Conteka Terminators for some Raptors there instead. You could change out the Vigilator for a different console. So much you can do. Change the Scorpius for some las cannon guys instead if you're that way inclined. But that's how I would build a really kind of nice, fun, still powerful, but wonderfully themed Night Lord Terror Assault army. There. I think that about does it for the Night Lords today. These spooky boys own the night, and that gives them a fantastic edge in game. Their Rites of War are both a lot of fun, Terror Assault possibly being one of the best Rites of War in the game right now. There are very few bad ways to build a Night Lord's army. The biggest mistake you can probably make is just going a bit too heavy on their special units, their Legion special units, especially the Raptors. They're overpriced for what they do. The 3+ save just kills them. So just, use them in just smaller squads, just for flavor, just for theme. Get them in there, but certainly don't go just full ham on those Night Lord special units, because you will find they won't perform as well as you want them to. If there's anything you think I've missed or anything you'd change with the army list that I've talked about today, definitely leave a comment below and throw in your experience with Night Lords, playing them, playing against them, and what you think is great. Importantly, make sure to keep rolling those dice and getting hyped for Heresy.